Yeah, by the way, a quick thank you on your email about pieces of the physics being missing. It's kind of funny because you and I have been talking about it for a while, and now
I
all of a
know.
sudden, now the mainstream's like, oh my God, this physics is missing. And so you're right. Our track record's pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah, and remember, I on a couple of them, I also said they changed the formulas. The formulas weren't right.
Right.
And it's kind of cool. So today we're going to talk about water.
Okay.
But we're going to have two different topics of water. There's one I want to go through just very quickly because first I just thought it was absolutely cool, but it also has some really good potential moving forward. Then I want to get into something completely different. So first this will be just fun and interesting. Then the second one, we're really going to do a deep dive into something really cool today.
Great.
So we're going to do our usual routine. I'm going to share. I'm so excited.
Cool.
I'm like a child sometimes. Here's how you get a hold of me. All the same. I've been getting a lot of really cool emails, by the way. Very interesting ones. Yeah.
Okay.
On True Social, it's really interesting. People will post questions to me on there, and I kind of pop in there every couple of days. So when you see a surge of things that I post, you can tell I'm in between something. So I literally just flew in last night. I'll tell you what's really funny is when they try to hide things. And this group was actually pretty good. There were really some senior people in there. It took me 2 days to find the problem. Normally I can find it the first day. So kudos to them. So let's talk about, does water have memory? So I've been hearing a lot about this and imprinting and different things like that. And so I've been doing some research and just to kind of bring everybody up to speed. And we're only going to go a little bit into this today because I got something even cooler. But remember how we talked about this with the Japanese scientists that when you have different vibrations, you can cause the crystals to form within water? Remember we did that
I remember.
We've done a number of these things.
Yep.
So there's been some research on this at a much higher and more advanced level. And what's interesting this is one of the examples, transmission of DNA genetic information into water. So what you're doing is you're exposing water to a DNA matrix or something very simple, which I'm going to show you a duplicate of it. And what they find is if you take the source away and then you look at the water will still have that imprinted within the water itself. So I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Does that really exist? So I took out something that I use for something else. I took I took a black black square and a blue circle. I put it in a Petri dish underneath a Petri dish filled with water. Sat there for 20 minutes. I took the cards out and I froze them. Now, guys, just so when you see this, don't laugh at me because I think my freezer was crooked.
I love the Nutty Professor. It's my favorite.
So if you look at this picture, what's really interesting is right here is a circle in the water. And the side to the right, now this was something that kind of really threw me off as I was looking at this. The circle, Mel, is elevated compared to the rest of the water, which I found extremely fascinating. So it was almost trying to create a 3D image of this. And it did the exact same thing for the square. This one is hard to see, it's the angle, but here's the square.
Right. Wow.
But that's not the cool thing. The cool thing then is I wrote the word circle on the Petri dish. With that same water, I let it sit, let it come back up. Mm-hmm. I wrote this word, put it underneath the Petri dish, and it recreated the circle.
Get out of here.
No, I'm not. I'm not kidding you. So I did the same thing here. I wrote the word square. See, there's the water. That's me as usual, right? And again, it recreated the circle. Yeah, exactly. That's was amazing.
Wow.
So, but this got me thinking. So the memory, I'm not sure if the consciousness has anything to do with this or why this is, but this was really, really interesting. However, what this did bring me back to is a picture that I saw back about 8 months ago, and it was with the Monster drink. I don't know I know a lot of people have seen this probably in social media, but Monster drink, these aren't actually claw marks, unleash the monster within. Those are actually, if you look at what that actually is that's the letter 6. So this is 666.
Oh my God.
Unleash the monster. Now, if you're looking at that imprinting of water, they're doing the same thing to these drinks. So what I did is I started looking across that, and all of these types of drinks all have these types of references on their labels. So you're literally reproducing that same thing.
Wow.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Wow.
But this was really kind of threw me off is the fact that these are also elevated. So clearly, and you're almost wonder if there's a certain degree of consciousness that's involved here. But guys, be careful what you drink. Yeah. And so, there's a bunch of these and a lot of these different foods. They have these labels that they're putting on. And if they had already known that you could do imprinting within a liquid, then clearly what they're doing is you're literally, and the other thing that's interesting, as you turn it upside down, you actually see Unleash the Beast. So guys, be more people. Let's just be more conscious. I mean, I'm always reading labels. Like I don't eat anything with preservatives unless I absolutely have to, first and foremost. But what's interesting is we have to be careful. This is like a whole new level of chemtrails, poisoning of our water. I mean, the magnitude of where this stuff goes is just mind-boggling. Yeah. And so, if we start to kind of be more conscious of what these things are, I think overall, eventually, first of all, these things should go out of business. But let's start doing deeper dives on this, everybody, and taking a look at this. This was just one example. I had a couple of others, but I didn't want to occupy a lot of our time because I have something really exciting I want to go over today. But this was just kind of one of my 4 experiments that I've been working on, and I've actually done more work on this, but we'll do a little bit deeper dive, and I'll have better pictures for everybody too. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Structured water, as well as there's by the way, in the older science that our older civilizations, they used to do imprinting of things, and water was one of them.
Wow.
So yes, very much so.
Very interesting.
So let me ask you this a quick question before we jump into the next one. There's no right or wrong answer, but Mel, do you remember back in the 70s and 80s? There was a guy that had a car that he drove that was driven on water.
I remember the video. I think we talked about it once on here a couple years ago. But I do remember the videos that went around several years ago. It was from the 70s. Was it from the 70s or 80s?
The first one was the 70s. There was a series of them. We're actually going to go into that. But
okay, cool.
And the last guy, I think it was the 90s, and he died. He was poisoned. They killed him, but as usual. But let's talk about these hydrogen fueled cell cars right now. So before I get into the subject of these cars that run on water, let's try to understand kind of that there's a little bit of some differences here. One uses a fuel cell where they cause a reaction between hydrogen and oxygen. And basically the rule of thumb here is you have H2O2 as a molecule. You're breaking off the hydrogen and you're using that in a combustion engine. I'm not a big fan of I don't think that that's the future in terms of transportation. However, I think that there's a lot of potential here. And so the bottom line is the hydrogen is used in the combustion engine. If you look at a normal engine, you put gas into the chamber, you're creating a combustion, and that's where you're getting your work. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
So they also have hydrogen fuel enhancement, where it's a mixture of hydrogen and conventional fuel that they inject in. And by the way, I've seen these cars personally up front. When I was in Italy, I actually got to see one, and there's a few of them here running around in the United States. So Elon Musk was also toying around with this, and this is a quick little excerpt, but Joe Rogan asked him, hey, have you been looking at these hydrogen cars, and these cars are based on water? And he says, yeah, actually we did, but the government didn't allow us to do this, and they came in and took all our prototypes, which is very interesting. And it's actually, I went back in and looked at that, and that is actually true. Wow. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you how to make one of these. So I've had a couple of prototypes that I've been working on. I'm on my third one right now. And I'm going to kind of show you some of these things. I also took a picture of actually one that does exist. So hopefully I'll see you next week. Oh, and if you think about it, if you've ever taken survival training, which I have, the most important thing is to have water.
Yeah.
You can go longer with food, but if you don't have water, you don't survive very long. And so by limiting the most important resource that the human need, that's complete control. Yes. So let's talk about. There's another company here that was talking about this, that you can actually simply run a car from extracted water. Now, the ones that they're running in Europe, which is interesting, is they're hydrogen charged, which is a little bit different from what I'm going to show you. There is a differentiation here. And so I want to kind of stress that. However, what I did is I made some changes to the original blueprint. Mm-hmm. 1 week after he filed his blueprint, this individual we're going to talk about in a minute, that's when he died. And then what's interesting is about 8 years later, somebody resubmitted that patent. However, what's really interesting is that's not the first time we've seen these patents. I traced these patents back as far as the early 1800s. So today's going to just blow everybody's mind.
Oh, I love
so. Here is one of the first patents in 1935 here in the United States. It's the exact same contract, electrolytic, which means it's run on water broken into hydrogen and oxygen. That's basically what these things are. So here's an example, but before I do that, I want to jump ahead because I want to show you something. You're going to laugh. You're going to love it. Guess who's also involved into it?
Tesla.
No, before we go to Tesla, the CIA.
Oh, well, so surprise.
I ran across a series of CIA documents as I was doing some of my research. And back in the 40s and the 50s, the CIA went to the Department of Justice and said, listen, a lot of these patents, we'd like to have first dibs on everything that we look at. The CIA has a team of scientists. Their only job is to sift through any patents that are being submitted, and they pull them for the ranking, for the necessity of security risk.
National security. Yeah. It's
national security. And by the way, there are dozens of these CIA documents. There were so many of them, I couldn't believe it. They were just everywhere. And these are documents that they take. And what's interesting about that, and by the way, Kamala mentioned this, is we're just going to take people's patents and we're going to, and they're already doing it.
Right.
They've been doing it since the 40s and the 50s. And here's one saying, listen, we're going to start doing it even more. And now we're not going to pay anyone for it.
Right.
I thought this is a little side trick. This is kind of interesting. So let's get into
the
this.
American Mafia.
Absolutely. Shame on them.
I know, believe me.
So now let's get into this a little bit. Stanley Myers, the guy's the name that put in his patent.
Oh, I think I remember that car.
Absolutely. So this guy had this car that he poured he'd pour the water down into the gasoline, he'd get this thing and he'd drive it. And he can go about 290 miles on one charge.
Wow.
So this
that would upset Standard Oil, I assume.
No oil. And what's interesting.
Right, I know. I said that would upset Standard Oil. Rockefellers.
Here's the other interesting thing is some of the people in my group that have been working on this, they've run this thing and they just let these things continually run. When you take apart the engines look brand new because the difference with the gasoline and the oils versus this hydrogen going into it, the thing is brand new. Here's the interesting thing. So there's a big group of us that we share our experiments.
Right.
No one that I work with ever shows their face on any of their designs. But by the way, I've seen this in Audis, BMWs, and these things have extremely high performance. I mean, they're much more efficient, than you would imagine. So here's the patent. Okay, and I want to show you the cell. There's a couple of interesting things. Here is the conventional electrolysis. Now, what this is first of all, this one's mine. So
I love that you do your own experiments. It's so great.
So what you have here are stainless steel plates. And what you do is you run that through, and you're running 12 volts of electricity through these. And when you put this in water, what this does is it takes the hydrogen, breaks it up, and the hydrogen then goes into your intake valve in an older car, for example, into the carburetor.
Wow.
And it runs. Some people augment their cars with in gasoline, so they'll have two of these things, and they're able to more than double or triple their gas mileage. Others, however, have taken this to the whole new level, and they're running their entire car on this thing. However, this was one of the original prototypes, and this one actually needed to be modified a little bit because let's kind of talk about what we have here and what some of the challenges are. So what we have here is we have an electrolyte within the water. So a couple of other things very quickly is you put in like sodium hydroxide, potassium chloride, some type of salt to increase the conductivity of this to create this. However, when you do that, you dilute down your water solution. And there's a couple of ways that you can improve this. Another challenge that you have is this gets extremely hot, and because it gets extremely hot, the wires, if you're not using a heavy gauge wire, they burn out. So a lot of people will have fuses on these things to blow these things out. However, in Meyer's version, in the prototype, he doesn't mention that, but he has one of these things in here. Now, what he does here that's very interesting, and so when people are doing this, just don't plug this, guys. First of all, if you try this, don't stick your finger in the water. All right, I'm just saying that right off the bat. Don't do it. I didn't. I'm just saying don't do it. But what you want to do in this particular thing, as you're running the electricity through the places, you actually want to send pulses of electricity at a specific timing variable. And how you do that depends on the number of plates and the size of your container. So it takes a little bit of manipulation to actually get this to create the hydrogen efficiently. If you don't have one of these, you already can do it. So you take the hose, the secured one. Let me show you what the secured one would look like really quickly, and then we're going to move on. Here's an example of one. So in there are the plates as they come back in, right? So what you want to do is if you take the export of this thing and you stick it into water, you'll see the water bubbling. It means you're creating that hydrogen. Now, if you take a match and you put it next to those bubbles, you'll see a flash because it's highly combustion. The reason, and this, by the way, is the reason why they tried hydrogen cars for decades, just hydrogen, but they put them in compression tanks. So you're literally sitting on a bomb. This is the exact opposite. What you're doing is you're maintaining the pressure through the amount that you're creating, and you have a discharge valve that. So if your pressure gets too high, it will come out of your extra exhaust and it just goes off into hydrogen. That's the main difference.
Wow.
And here is an example of what those plates would look like. But I want to mention here very quickly to people, and I know I'm really digging in deep, but we got a lot to go through here. So if you notice here, you've got in this picture here, this is basically what we're doing. So you got a positive charge, a negative image, a neutral plate between them, and you have a negative. So these plates are all, that's what you're seeing here, Mel, in there is every other has a charge, whether positive or negative. However, what we've learned to get a higher level of hydrogen is you do a 2-to-1 ratio. So this is the old diagram here. The neutral, you need 2 between your positive and negative charges throughout that. If you do that, you'll increase your efficiency. So let's say roughly you're getting about 24% efficiency in this one. So you have to add more hydrogen to make it more efficient. Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to pause and see if you have questions. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, and I know this is kind of bottom line here is anybody could do this. You could do this for a generator and you'd have unlimited electricity. There's 1,000 applications for this. You could make a stove out of this, then pour water in the back end of the stove, let this thing charge, and you automatically have natural hydrogen fuel, and you can use it for cooking. You can do it for anything. And all you need is a few components, this being the most important.
Wow.
Now, some of the challenges that you have on this is a couple of things. You still need an electric charge. So in a motor, you have your alternator, and you'd hook your battery then back up to this thing, and the alternator is going to charge your battery. So you'd have an unlimited amount of doing this. If you want to lighten your load, one individual, what he did is he put a solar panel on the roof of his car, ran it into an inductor to charge a battery that only powers this. Extremely efficient.
Huh.
Yeah. So there's multiple variations on how this can be applied to modern science. It's extremely efficient. Now, is that the long-term one? I think that there's a lot more efficient energy options available, but since we can't see them, let's get going and start with this one.